Hey folks, let's spend some time with friends up north. Pat Kreitlow of Up North News is on Lake Wissota. Kristin Bry of As Goes Wisconsin is along Lake Michigan. And up on Lake Minocqua is Kirk Bangstead of the Minocqua Brewing Company. Wherever you are, welcome, because you're up north.
Well, hey there. Welcome to the cabin. You've made it up north. Nice to have you here. I'm Pat Kreitlow, managing editor of Up North News, WI.com.
I'm Kristin Bry, creator of As Goes Wisconsin.
And I'm Kirk Bangstead of the Minocqua Brewing Company.
We join you live every Wednesday evening at 7 on Devil Radio News Talk 92.7 and play it back over the weekend. We post at upnorthpodcast.com. Our email address is info@upnorthpodcast.com. We have two guests this hour that we're planning to bring to you, both on the subject of PFAS, or forever chemicals, and what the legislature is not doing about it. We will have City Administrator Zach Vruwink of the City Administrator of Rhinelander, and Doug Oitzinger. Kirk?
Yep, that's it.
Doug Oitzinger is the former mayor of the city of Marinette, current city alder there, a founding member of Save Our Water, or SOH2O, a citizen action group on PFAS contamination from the Tyco JCI contamination spill in the Marinette and Peshtigo area. So if you have been hearing about forever chemicals and PFAS all the time and wanted to know what is this really about and why are a couple of these communities up north affected, along with other parts of the state, French Highland over by La Crosse and elsewhere, you'll want to hear from our guests that we have coming up later in this hour. But first, I forgot to cue up a breaking news sounder, but breaking news within the past hour from Politico, the national political magazine, and the West Wing Playbook, which bills itself as the power players, the latest policy developments, and intriguing whispers percolating inside the West Wing of the White House. The headline, Ladies' Night at Kamala's. And it begins with, Senator Tammy Baldwin was ready to party. The low-key Wisconsin Democrat didn't arrive empty-handed at the Naval Observatory on Tuesday evening for Vice President Kamala Harris's dinner party with women senators. She brought beer, and not just any beer. Kamala-themed, nearly 10% alcohol content beer. Baldwin brought Harris a 4-pack of Kamala from Wisconsin's Minocqua Brewing Company. The beer pays homage to Harris, featuring an image of her on the can. It's the strongest beer we could make, 9.7% alcohol by volume, imperial. We prefer Vice Presidential Stout, the brewery boasts on its website. Kirk, you made Politico.
I know.
Big time.
I know. And so it's been blowing up my phone. Like, people are texting me that link, and Tammy, Senator Baldwin also posted an Instagram of her with Vice President Harris, and gave me a shout out too. So it's kind of been a wild last hour for me. I'm really excited, and it's just proud of everything. So
Kristin, how great is this? I mean, look at it. We know a celebrity now. I mean,
I know, this is so exciting. I mean, it was only a matter of time until she drank the beer named after her, right? But I wonder how drunk she got off of it. Because when I drink your beer, at least that beer specifically, well, I'm not sober, but
9.7%. I mean, Kirk.
Yeah, it's a boozy beast.
You went for the strong woman, didn't you?
Well, yeah. I mean, of course, she is a strong woman. You got to give her a strong beer. Yeah, this gets you hammered after one.
Okay, careful there. We will hear more adventures of the Minocqua Brewing Company a little later on in the program. But that just came over. We had to share that. There you are in the political playbook. So before we get to that and to all the other headlines, Kirk, you've had some emancipation inoculations, or was it inoculation? See, out of sight, out of mind. But those are behind you. But that didn't stop you from going to parties. You are our resident, party crasher. So this time it was related to the radio station, I understand.
Yeah. So we're on Devil Radio right now for everybody listening. On the podcast, we do it live on Wednesdays, and Dom's become a good. Kroot's become a good friend. He's really
not Dom. No, Dom's not a good friend. Groot.
Screw Dom. I don't care about him at all. But Grooty's become a good friend, and he's really helped us by kind of getting this podcast out. And I'm down in Madison quite a bit selling beer. So I came to his party yesterday, and he had a really great show. It was kind of for a lot of his sponsors, but also it was a gathering of the who's who of Democratic politics. So it was really great to see a lot of folks running for Senate. Chris Larson was there, Sarah Godlewski was there, people that have been in. I haven't been in Wisconsin politics very long at all, so I know who these people are, but I don't really know them. Like Scott Ross is has made lots of waves in life, and then.
Scott Ross is the only one at that party that would talk more than you and louder than you. So I have to feel like you guys, there was a kinship there immediately.
Yeah, it was good to celebrate what this radio station does for not only Madison but for the state of Wisconsin. I mean, to my knowledge, it's the only progressive talk radio station in the state where we've got a gazillion conservative talk radio stations, and so what a wonderful thing he's done for our state, and I really hope it continues in its success.
Well, I'm glad that went well. I mean, contrast that to Kristin, who spent some time on the farm this week and almost came this close, reportedly, to stealing a calf.
I did. I mean, I don't know where I would put it once it got bigger but
no longer pass it off as a lab. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Because I would say the premature calf, who I think was born 6 weeks early, and they still don't know if she's going to survive, but they did name him Tiny Tim, because what else do you name a premature calf? Being that early, and I think she was 2 weeks old when I met her. She was the size of a big dog. And so the fact that that's as little as they get probably could not fit in my 2-bedroom apartment. But the farm itself was amazing. Carrie Mess, also known as Dairy Carrie on all social medias, is awesome. And her story is really interesting because she was not raised on a farm. She went to La Follette. She's from Madison, and happened to marry a guy who also did not think that he was raised on a farm, but he did not think that he was going to be the sibling to take over the farm. And yet here they are. And she's been working on the farm for 13 years. He's, I think, joined her shortly after. They have like 100 cows, 300 acres, got there for the afternoon chores, which, knowing that they have to do that 2 to 3 times a day, I was like, I'm good. I don't need to do this regularly, but I'm happy that I did it once.
Well, good. I mean, and of course you found the farmer that's on social media, because that's where they go. My brother-in-law, who took over the family farm, my wife was the oldest of 6. They milked cows, every morning before getting on the school bus, and Farmer Bill, her brother, who took over, has famously never gone on social media, says he never will, is a very soft-spoken farmer who says, if you want to know what I'm thinking, you can ask me. And so I'm glad that you found that more farmers are getting involved in social media, showing off what they're doing. It's for June Dairy Month, a little feature that she's putting together for Up North News that you'll find over at Up North News WI on social media. And I loved seeing the shot list, all the camera shots that were taken afterwards, because Kristin, you probably remember some of them better than I do, but I believe it was cow standing in pen, cow sucking on Kristin's fingers, cow nuzzling another cow. I
think I got a lot of cow shots. And so, no, I would say, we got some of the milking parlor, but it's a lot of cows. They're all in their own pens, whether it's the calves who are separated, then they get socialized with about 3 other calves or 3 other heifers. Then the ones who are in a breeding age are in a different stall. Then the ones who are actually pregnant are over here. And then the ones who've actually, I learned this week, which I guess probably should have been common knowledge in Wisconsin, but it's a heifer until they have their first baby, and then it's a cow. So the calf, then a heifer, then a cow. And so I did not know that.
I love hearing this. This is great. I can't wait to see the report. And really the whole point of doing this was to give people more of an appreciation for what Wisconsin farmers do during this June dairy month. And I'm sure that you have that now, Kristin, more so than you did already.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt. And then finally you went, going from the farm to the big city, first time at the Fiserv, I understand. Did you bring any help to the Bucks?
Brought some luck. We did win on Sunday, which was not what I can say about last night. But so I mean, another thing off the adult list to do moving back to Wisconsin, because since I left at 16, I had been at the Bradley Center, but I had never been to the Fiserv. And so got to go for the first time and see the Bucks win and tie up the series on Sunday, only for them to go back to 3-2 last night on my television in my living room. But
Bucks and 7. That's the new cheer. Bucks and 7.
Bucks and 7. Yeah, I've seen that. We have to now retire Bucks and 6. It's cursed. So fingers crossed for the next 2 games.
So just to chime in here. So you met my girlfriend Sarah, Kristin. She's from New York, and so she's a huge Nets fan. She can't get tickets in Brooklyn, so we found tickets yesterday, so we're going tomorrow to the game.
Great.
I hope I can bring good luck. I don't.
It'll probably be mobbed, but if you guys get here early enough, let me know, and we'll try to meet up before you get into the arena.
And I just hope this isn't a deal breaker in the whole relationship status. So tune in next week to find out what Kirk lists as his relationship status on Facebook and other social media. We'll be back to talk more about PFAS and keeping Wisconsin water clean in just a bit. You're up north. Welcome back to the Up North podcast. I'm Pat Kreitlow along with Kirk Bangstead and Kristin Bry, and joining us now 2 guests to talk about PFAS, which is a shortened way of saying an extremely long chemical name. Our pop quiz for our guests will be first if they can, tell us what that entire word stands for, that PFAS is short for. But we're going to start with Doug Oitzinger, the former mayor of the city of Marinette, current city alder there, founding member of Save Our Water, SOH2O, a citizen action group on PFAS contamination from the Tyco JCI contamination spill in the Marinette and Peshtigo areas. Zach Vruwink is city administrator in Rhinelander, formerly the mayor of Wisconsin Rapids, and also, again, a city dealing with its own form of PFAS problems. Gentlemen, nice to have you both here. Thank you for joining us here on the Up North podcast.
Glad to be here.
Doug, let's start with your situation in Marinette. It's a little bit more single point source, I guess you could say. I mean, not entirely, but people do associate it with the Tyco plant. Tell us what it is and what has led to such a problem with PFAS in the Marinette area.
Well, Tyco, which is part of Johnson Controls, is a world supplier of firefighting substances, and in this case, the PFAS is in something called AFFF, which is a firefighting foam primarily used to suppress oil-based fires. So it's used around airports to get a vehicle on fire, anything that's petroleum-based, because the characteristics of PFAS is that it sticks together very tightly, and so it's great for smothering flames, but for other products as well. I mean, it's on Gore-Tex. It's a great water repellent.
Stain proofing and Teflon and
all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. But in our case, it's firefighting foam, and because they have a manufacture it here, but they also have a large training and testing facility. They would routinely go out, and I mean, we would see the black smoke weekly where they're doing tests or they're doing training. We knew what was going on there. We just didn't know what they were spraying on. It was poison.
Hey, Doug, let me jump in with a question here. So I wanted to step back a bit and say the reason we're talking about PFAS today is that the state legislature just took away a lot of the bits of protecting us from these forever chemicals. They kind of just took it out of the bills, and there's not a lot left to protect Marinette. Can you tell us what some of the protections that you were looking for, and how you as a bipartisan legislation that kind of passed last year with Nygren and Hansen? I want to hear that part of the story of how you guys tried to solve this problem, and you had a lot of support in Wisconsin, and how that didn't come to pass.
Well, to go back to last year, as we got more and more educated, and we came to realize there are no laws in the state of Wisconsin regulating PFAS, zero. And there's no EPA law. There's no federal law regulating PFAS. They have a health advisory limit, HAL limit, which is a way of saying, be careful, but it's not an enforceable limit. So we were very active in trying to lobby for citizens lobbying to get regulation of PFAS in the state of Wisconsin, because it is a poison. It's 500 times more poisonous than rat poison. I mean, literally, you can consume 500 times more rat poison in your drinking water than you can PFAS. So it's very dangerous stuff. And we were successful in, first we got the CLEAR Act introduced, but that didn't gather any Republican support. And we worked very hard with our representative, who was a Republican, was in leadership, John Nygren, to get with State Senator Dave Hansen, Democrat, and come up with compromise legislation that had kind of been built off the CLEAR Act, but wasn't quite as comprehensive. We managed to get that all the way through both the Senate Environmental Committee and the Assembly Environmental Committee. Bipartisan support, passed in both committees overwhelmingly. I was down in Madison testifying, as were quite a few of us from the area. And then it hit the Assembly at the close of the session, and Speaker Voss refused to bring the bill up for a vote, and he killed it. And it's pretty basic. I mean, this is politics in Wisconsin right now. The Republican Party is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce, and WMC killed it. They said, nope, you're not going to vote on it. You're not going to pass it. We don't want regulation of PFAS in this state. So what you see happening is there'll be little window dressing PFAS bills that incrementally, they might do some good, but in terms of protecting our population, in terms of addressing the massive contamination we have here, or you mentioned, I think, La Crosse, yeah, it's not going to cut it.
Right. Okay. Kristin, you were going to
yeah. So so I'm Zach. Good to see you. Zach and I know each other because he, as you said, was the mayor of Wisconsin Rapids, and both of my parents are very, very fond of you, and we're very upset that you are no longer the mayor of Wisconsin Rapids, but very happy to see the new job you have in Rhinelander. So how is this? Obviously, I think what you dealt with Wisconsin Rapids was some of the after effect of the paper mill and the pollution that created and the health effects that has created for Wisconsin Rapids. Now this seems like a very different issue to be dealing with in Rhinelander. So how is that manifested there for you?
Right. In Rhinelander, I think we've kind of fast forwarded the clock, if you will, on what many of Wisconsin's communities are going to be facing. Unlike Marinette, Rhinelander currently is not facing any litigation. We're not involved in any active litigation. And so the mayor and myself and my role are now working very strongly to just fix it. How do we encourage the legislature, the Joint Finance Committee, and the DNR to put forth regulations that ultimately, as the former mayor, as Doug just mentioned, for us to be able to come and be able to protect people from the health effects known with PFAS. In Rhinelander, we've got 2 of our municipal wells, 25% of our well capacity currently offline because of high traces of PFAS and variants. So for us in Rhinelander, we really want to bring a just fix it approach that doesn't involve litigation, but it involves and requires the state legislature to come together and the governor to agree on some form of consensus to be able to allow municipalities to put this together. I believe clean water and environmental issues, environmental contamination, just like our American flag, don't belong to a political party. And so it's really important for us to come together on this issue to protect our community members and fellow Wisconsinites so that we all can consume safe drinking water. And in Rhinelander, I'm pleased to say 100% of our wells currently active are PFAS free. But I can say that many of the state's cities and communities don't know whether or not there's PFAS, primarily because of the stalemate that's involved in Madison right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, Zach, and we're gonna have a break at some point, and I want to ask Doug the same question. Are you aware of what they just did in the budget, and they took out a lot of protections? Can you tell us what Rhinelander needs from the state legislature to really protect the city?
Yeah, quite simply, there are treatment technologies that have been pioneered around the country and around the world that Rhinelander could benefit from. But because we don't have any limits or any laws on the books that indicate what are safe concentrations of PFAS, we simply can't. Investing in PFAS technology and treatment isn't a prudent thing to do at this time. We're working toward doing so, and I think we can do so. So right now we're looking for some state resources. There was a great proposal by the governor to invest in municipal solutions to help cities like Rhinelander get treatment solutions online.
Okay. Well, let's talk more about that after this break, and we'll talk not just about cleaning up, but the ability of the DNR to even find these things, these areas in the first place, and how that is being stymied by lawsuits and such. So more about PFAS with our two guests coming up right after the break. You're up north.
Kristin Bry with Kirk and Pat Kreitlow.
And our guests this time around are talking about PFAS, a shortened form of forever chemicals, as they're called. Zach Vruwink is the city administrator in Rhinelander. Doug Oitzinger, former mayor of Marinette, current city alder, founding member of Save Our Water, SOH2O.
Okay, so let's start talking about what's actually happening right now. Doug, I know you've been following this more than probably the rest of us. I'm sure Zach has as well. But what are all the PFAS parts of what was put into the budget bill that Wisconsinites need to have to be safe, and what was taken out, and what was left in, and what are the repercussions of that?
Well, basically, the governor proposed a number of positions in the DNR and Department of Health Services to deal directly with PFAS. I mean, our agencies are overwhelmed right now. 2 years ago, we had 30 contamination sites in the state. Now we have over 70. That's in 2 years' time. So they're playing catch up, and it's not easy for them. So the main thing we're dealing with is money. The governor also had some specific language in there that would make it easier to get actual rulemaking accomplished. The Republicans took all of that out and left one segment of funding on PFAS in the budget, and that, it's window dressing. It's money that would pay for fire departments across the state of Wisconsin that has AFFF firefighting foam with PFAS in it, to turn it in and get it replaced with a non-fluorinated firefighting foam, and that would pay for that. Now that's a good thing,
right? But it's like you said, it's a feel-good thing and does nothing about the sites themselves. And to clarify, when you say we went from 30 some sites needing cleanup to 70 some sites, it doesn't mean that there was suddenly all this pollution happening. It means these sites are being discovered from what could have been decades ago that these chemicals were involved, right? Because Zach, let me turn to you for a minute. In Rhinelander, I mean, part of it was that for decades, they were talking about sludge being, spread out near the airports and things, which is why I talked about it maybe being not such more of a non-point source of it. But you wouldn't have seen that for years until it showed up in the water, and I have to believe that's going to be the case in many more spots around Wisconsin based on your experience.
That's right. I mean, as communities have to test, whether it's by their own accord and they don't know the repercussions and not having protections from the state to be able to protect people, there's a lack of confidence in doing your own testing and really knowing what are really the solutions and the options for remedying the contaminated water sources in communities. You know, should there be a catastrophe like in Rhinelander where, let's say, another well goes down, we're faced with having to return those wells into service and contaminating our drinking water supply again, simply to provide water to our residents and to our industry. And that's certainly not something that's a sustainable or a healthy solution for anybody.
Wait, so Zach, tell me, if PFAS is discovered, you've got what, 2 out of 4 wells working right now?
Yeah, we actually have 8 wells, but they're all kind of co-located. So one could say that there's probably 4 total high capacity wells. Yeah.
So if you lose any more wells, I mean, we're getting into like third world country status at that point, right? Like, what happens if all the water's too polluted to drink? I mean, what does Rhinelander do?
Yeah, you really need to provide an emergency water source. And as Doug had mentioned, the DHS has limits established, but the DNR hasn't finished the rulemaking process, and then they have to go through public hearings and then the legislature to ultimately adopt those rules and standards. So we're a long way off of really knowing what municipalities and others that provide drinking water need to provide treatment or testing to whatever standard. So in that case, it's simply bringing water trucks to places like Rhinelander, and we know that that's not a solution. There's treatment technologies that are in existence in the country and around the world that we could bring to places like Rhinelander to restore those 2 wells to operation. But because of the partisanship and because of the debate and not really coming to the center on a consensus on this, we're faced with a situation where those wells, who are to us new wells, remain suspended.
And here's the irony of that, is that a year ago, 2019, prior to the pandemic, one of the things we heard about most out of the Capitol was the speaker's task force on clean water, or on water quality. And it did not just look at PFAS. It looked at everything from high capacity wells to nutrient runoff from farms to lead pipes in Milwaukee. I mean, just there. We love to say how proud we are to have clean water in Wisconsin, but if the speaker's task force showed us nothing, it showed us that there are multiple ways where the cleanliness of Wisconsin water is being threatened, and yet it is that same speaker and that same assembly where these most recent rules and remedies on PFAS have gone to die. Zach, you're a city administrator, you've been a mayor, you've talked about trying to find that consensus, that middle ground. And I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but that has to be awfully hard when there doesn't appear to be anybody on one side of the aisle to point to and say, this is a bipartisan obstacle we have to overcome.
Yeah, I find it no coincidence that the task force showed all the problems and the complexities associated with it, and it showed how woefully underfunded the study is to remedy and provide clean water to residents and industry. For pro-business and pro-growth, that also comes with the responsibility of providing clean water. And as somebody who is working every day to bring better housing solutions and a cleaner, safer roadways to our residents and et cetera, we need to deal with the clean drinking water issue, or it's going to be such a insurmountable cost at some point in the future. So, if we're going to be fiscally responsible, addressing this with funding now is the most responsible way to deal with it. And I think I feel for the 600 and some municipalities around Wisconsin who have not done a form of testing, and at the same time who are not going to have the resources to be able to address this. Rhinelander's done some great partnerships with UW and some of the programs there. We actually just are applying for a USGS study to work with the federal government on doing some additional study, but these are all on our own accord. We're trying to fit these in alongside the other priorities, all the while the state sits on the sideline and legislature sticks its head in the sand on addressing this issue for the long term.
Go ahead, Kristin.
So, as someone who I feel like tries to consistently think about big, complicated, if not boring issues, and how do we, that are very important, like exactly like this, and how do we hold people accountable for the decisions that they're making at election time. And so how do we make this clear? Because since coming back to Wisconsin, in such a purple state, there's all these, red versus blue arguments. Clean water seems like one of the few things that everyone agrees on, especially everyone in Wisconsin agrees on. And so how do we translate this pretty dire issue to get people to actually hold the people who are making decisions and holding kind of a lot of the drinkable drinking water hostage? How do we communicate that to voters?
Well, if I can answer that.
Sure, go ahead, Doug.
Because we just had a special election up here to replace Representative Nygren, who resigned after he got reelected. Everybody runs on they're an environmentalist and they're for clean water. But they have this amazing word whenever you talk about legislation. The word is but. I'm for clean water, but. I'm for the environment, but that bill is too much regulation. But that bill will hurt Wisconsin jobs. We've got to say, you're not for clean water if you use that next word, but. And we are literally talking about poison. We're talking about poisoning children. We're talking about poisoning pregnant moms. We're talking about poisoning people when we let these types of contaminations get in their drinking water supply. We've got to be a lot tougher, and we've got to call people out. And it's going to be a long fight, because the moneyed interests do not want these things regulated. They're making too much money on them.
Doug, I've heard some horror stories, medical issues that have sprung up in your area. I heard a woman lost her thyroid or something potentially because of PFAS. Two-part question. One, what is actually happening to people's health? Especially, and there's deer, like health, the hunting aspect of it, and where is it in Wisconsin? Like, is it, because we don't even know. So there's a three-part question. Health, as it relates to like hunting and fish and deer, and then how do we know where it's at?
Well, there was a classic study done, an epidemiological study done coming out of the DuPont lawsuit in West Virginia. A movie, Dark Waters, was made about it. And they basically come up with a number of illnesses that are related to high levels of PFAS in the blood. Testicular cancer, thyroid problems, immune deficiency issues. Think about that during COVID-19. Oh. Learning disabilities. There's a series of things, medical issues that have been identified. Can we relate specific medical issues in our community to PFAS? Well, there's been no study, so no, we can't. But there's a tragic story of a young man who went to Marinette High School and got testicular cancer and had been drinking the water that we now know is contaminated. And out of his class, it was like 4 or 5 of his fellow classmates all got testicular cancer. That is off the charts in terms of, how many cases you would have per 100,000 people. So that's that. We already have at our urging, at SOH2O's urging, we got the DNR to test some deer. They actually shot the deer in the city of Marinette, tested them. Now we have a deer advisory, don't eat deer livers because they found PFAS in it. Fish, well, Madison, you got it in your fish there. You got it in your fish in Lake Superior. You got, it's in the Bay of Green Bay. It's going to show up in fish. It's a little bit different than other contaminations because it's not showing up in the fat, it's showing up in the meat of the fish. And it seems to attack the smaller fish rather than the larger fish.
And yet for all of these problems, what's documented and what's still being researched, the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources is having their hands tied by a lawsuit from Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce, which claimed the DNR cannot test for PFAS because there's no agreed upon standard. But there's no agreed upon standard because WMC was able to convince Republican legislators to weaken or neuter what few standards existed. So, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that the DNR can't take care of this.
They right now they have two lawsuits in. One of the lawsuits, the one that I'm trying to intervene in, is that the DNR shouldn't be forcing anybody to do anything unless they've set a rule. Then when the DNR goes to set a rule, because I've been in those hearings, WMC comes and say that rule is out of bounds. So they're fighting it every which way they can.
Exactly.
And the strategy is, let's wait till the next election. Maybe we'll get more favorable people in Madison.
And it just comes down to, you've got to call it what it is, protecting polluters. And with that, we want to thank you guys so much, Doug Oitzinger and Zach Vruwink. Thank you. Good luck with everything that you're having to deal with there. And we hope that we can have you on again with a happier update sometime down the road. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We will be back in just a bit. You're up north.
Said I was a better person than I knew I was.
The Up North podcast is a production of just the three of us, Kirk Bangstead, Kristin Bry, Pat Kreitlow, and we take a little time each week to talk about our day jobs instead because we really like them. Hope you'll support them. And we begin once again with what Kristin's been up to. Kristin.
All right, so As Goes Wisconsin produces content that is motivated by three things: getting you to laugh, making this super complicated super not, and motivating more people to give a damn. So whether it's Wisconsin history, sports, or policy and politics, we break it down with a comedic twist in 60 seconds or less. So whether you find yourself checking Facebook or Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok, you can follow us at As Goes Wisconsin.
All right. And I'm Pat Kreitlow here to remind you that the Up North podcast is an independent endeavor, not part of Up North News, the similarly named but unaffiliated newsroom that I operate along with a team of reporters and support staff. You can sign up for the daily newsletter that I assemble every weekday morning by visiting our website, upnorthnewswi.com, and clicking on newsletter in the top banner. We also want to thank Devil Radio 92.7, where we air live on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. And download the Devil Radio app. You can listen to the station live or on the go, get shows on demand and more. You can also email us at info@upnorthpodcast.com. And now Kirk is here to once again tell us what a big deal he is, getting the vice president to bring his product to the White House. Go ahead, Mr. Humblebrag.
No, actually, Pat, after we just heard those last two guests, I don't want to talk about the Monaco Brewing Company. I want to talk about this podcast. And as you know, it was our intention and Kristin's intention to bring a different viewpoint to northern Wisconsin. And although we're live in Madison right now, this podcast is really for those that live in northern Wisconsin, where it's deeply red. And my God, it's just so important to hear really smart people like a city administrator and a past mayor who actually understand how PFAS hurts so many people, just not just disparaging our Republican-led majority state legislature for not doing anything and actually hurting people. And so I want to promote this podcast and I want to hopefully get people to download it. You can go to upnorthpodcast.com. That's every week. There's a new episode there. You can sign up for this podcast weekly by going to like the normal spots like Spotify or Apple iTunes. We really need to get this podcast out there because for some crazy reason or another, we get some great speakers on this thing, and it actually gives good analysis and good news that are not good news, but important news that we need to talk about. So I just want to promote the podcast tonight.
I'm telling, and you talk about these great guests. Kirk, we had no guests this morning. You did this. Kristin and I were just kind of looking at, I don't know, what do you want to talk about? I don't know. And then Kirk rides to the rescue on this great white steed, of a reputation he has for pestering as many people as possible to get good guests. And you found a couple of great ones, and we appreciate that very much. In talking about things that Up North News was working on lately, and we want to try to find a couple of good stories to highlight. And one is about how local communities are putting American Rescue Plan funding back to work. You'll recall that's the stimulus bill that not a single Republican voted for. And most people know it as the $1,400 checks, but it was also more PPP loans. It was extended unemployment. But another part of it was aid to state and local governments. And so we've started now asking in various cities, what are you doing with your allocation to try to help out your local economy? And so if you go to upnorthnewswi.com, you will see some of the ways that some various communities are doing that, whether it's through expanding broadband or making sure they protect parks and recreation programs, working on affordable housing, and I believe, Kristin, in Wisconsin Rapids, they're talking about what they can do with the mill up there as well, conceivably. These are the things that, that government can do to not just get caught up in the same old circular debate. The American Rescue Plan actually took some action, and now that action is starting to happen in all of our communities, and we need to see more of that.
What is the thing, Kristin, that's happening with the paper mill that this money's going to go towards?
Well, I actually don't know what the update is, because basically the last update I heard was, so the day that the Joint Finance Committee was like, we're not expanding Badger Care, and everyone, after Evers had announced all the different ways that he would spend the money if we got the extra 1.6 billion. And one of which was a $50 million loan to a co-op that is trying to buy the mill. So when Verso, yeah, who did own because the paper mill in Wisconsin Rapids, they make magazine paper, so it's like that glossy specific paper. So they wanted to buy it to keep so many jobs, but literally that night it got struck by lightning. The mill literally got struck by lightning. So I have not heard an update on how much damage was done. And I haven't heard an update on what the progress would be for this co-op to buy it. But that was kind of the solution after Verso was like at last summer. It was like literally almost exactly a year ago when they announced that they were going to be closing. Which is going, if that actually does happen, will have a lot of effects on that city.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And then one more story we'll get to before we go in talking about, again, local economies, and that is the local economy that involves with getting hitched. And about a year ago, reporter Julian Emerson reported on all of the small little niche wedding venues. Those of us who are of a particularly elderly age only got married in churches. That was the only thing that was allowed. Now, one of my daughters got married on the shores of Lake Michigan, another at a horse ranch in Idaho, and there's plenty of these places around Wisconsin as well. But they took a real hit last year, and now they're starting to come back. And Julian also talked to the couples who've had to put off their wedding till now, so an extra year or more, because these venues are filling up fast again. But my favorite line in here, and it gets us back to the vaccinations. Some couples declined to be interviewed for the story because they are attempting to keep their big day secret from family members who they know haven't been vaccinated. We just don't want to cause any more fights, one bride-to-be told Up North News.
Wow.
You just get the shot, people. We're at 49.2%.
You can't invite your cousin because they're not vaccinated. What a way to break families up, Yeah.
So, hey, let's avoid that. Get the shot already. All right. Thanks for joining us up north at the cabin this week. For Kristin Bry and Kirk Bangstead, I'm Pat Kreitlow. We'll see you next week.
Let me die happy.